you'd need to have like 95% of nonce nodes to be able to like have a meaningful affect of being able to actually filtering out JPEGs. And so one of the things that I think is, from my conclusions, is that part of the objectives of raising the op return is to essentially let like op returns like a trash can, that like you can put shit in and people can prune it off later. I think a lot about the idea of like, if I take $100 bill and I draw a dick on it, and someone wants to pay me $500 to get my dick dollar, like they're stupid, because like it's just a dick that I drew on a dollar bill.
The dick drawn on the dollar, I mean, you can print more dollars, you can print more Bitcoins, and the dick that you print on Bitcoin will be there forever, and it will always be costly to download because everyone needs to download the dick.
Essentially, like the technical and the non-technical are a division. With like, this is just classic how Roman society was, is that like the technical are the patricians and the non-technical like are the plebeians. I think that Bitcoiners need their own tribune of the plebs, so that like node runners can essentially like elect their representative to core that can then actually like talk to core and be like, hey, like all of the node runners are pissed off at what you guys are trying to do. We all have the same objective that like we want to free ourselves from fiat money, that Bitcoin is the best solution to do that. And we should find the best ways to work together to make sure that we do that.
Erik, a warm welcome back to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be back, my friend. It's always nice to see you. Better to see you in the flesh, but this works pretty well.
Yeah, we last saw each other. We were just chatting about it. We last saw each other in Calgary. My first time in Canada. Was that your first time in Canada too? Have you been before?
No, I've unfortunately had the opportunity to visit the Great North. I mean, it's a beautiful place. Just terrible what's kind of happening with. I've been really impressed with the former British protectorates and how much they've really destroyed their cultures and agency of their people in general. So it's been impressive.
Yeah, I saw a political compass on Twitter. I think it was yesterday, and I was about to like tweet it with another picture of another political compass, but as life got in the way and it got out of hand. But it was basically, you know, the corner of far left and far totalitarian and far or authoritarian, and it's like a little corner there where it's that said it's okay. And then the rest was all far right, and this is how the left views the political compass, right? So if you're not a totalitarian lefty, then everything else is far right. But the actual political compass that I was about to paste is the correct one, which is that all the quadrants are just different shades of fucking communism.
Yeah, it's kind of where we're at. I've realized actually more recently that like there's this part of the self-reinforcement mechanism is that like you can't actually have a logical discussion about anything. So like the moment that you say something that's like outside of the Overton window of acceptability, that like you just get shouted down, and it's all like emotional reactionaryism, where it's like, look, like, hey, hang on, like before we get emotional reaction, like can we do a logical conversation? And like usually like that can't happen, which means there's always a redoubling back down into the same dialogue of like, you're a fascist if you believe that anyone outside of the state has a right to own a weapon or something like that.
Yeah, but it seems like the Overton window has shifted a bit since Trump's return and all this. It's okay to say retarded again, I guess. But
yeah, but that's not the kind of political victory that I'm looking for. I'm looking for action.
you still want the intellectual debates to be actually intellectual and not just smearing the other side, or like just regression into stupidity. Like that's sort of the fear now, I think, in terms of where the public debate is heading. I mean, it's been that since it's been like that since forever from a certain viewpoint. I mean, we certainly come from a different angle here, just calling a spade and calling theft, and very few people admit that.
There's a particular kind of brittleness of thought that like AI is probably having some affect on it, but it's like you can't actually return to first principles, because when you try to do that, like people call you racist, and when you go, well, hang on, like is actually like when you try to get them to think and like chain their own assembly of logic, you actually find that like they don't seem to actually be capable of it, and that like all of their quote knowledge just comes from referential stuff, as opposed to being like, all right, like if I douse myself in gasoline and like light this match, will I actually like light on fire? And they're like, I don't know, like, let's ask Chat GPT. And it's like, no, all right, let's go.
Yeah. No, the fact that you can ask an AI what's right and what's wrong, and that how many people just lazily do that without even questioning any. And for the most part, you can. But so there's something to it. But we don't want a world where that's the only option. It's like an even worse form of Wikipedia checking stuff. I think like it's still some server somewhere doing some stuff, and it's not it's not from first principles.
It's not at all. And to me, the secondary problem is that, like, just going to Google or Wikipedia is worse enough. But like, then you at least like had to do the comparison yourself of like, well, is this article true or this? But with the AIs just regurgitating whatever they want. In addition to the one I worry the most about is like the subtle change in language that happens. So you start forgetting particular words. And this was like exactly what George Orwell wrote in the appendix of 1984 that he talked about Ingsoc. He was like, Ingsoc is a language specifically designed to make it so that you don't actually have the words to be able to describe particular forms of thought that like are seditious. And so like, that's sort of the direction that I see us drifting.
I love that book so much. I've read it a bunch of times, and I used to fall at one of the crew transfer vessel jobs I had. I used to fall asleep to it when we had the night watch, and I had to sleep on the boat like moored to a buoy in the middle of the Baltic Sea. I just fell asleep to 1984 because I think it's beautifully written, and like but it's so sad. Like in the UK with the digital ID and all of that stuff going on, it's like they literally took it as a manual instead of a warning. The warning it was supposed to be. It's just sad all over. And so much like the police force is called the Ministry of Love, for instance. I think that's brilliant because that's so close to what's going. Like the word liberal, for instance, it means nothing. Like it has nothing to do with liberty anymore. If it ever did, like, but it's been completely hijacked. And there are so many words like that. And Orwell like nailed that so hard in that book. I think it's a beautiful piece of work.
Yeah, it's a little creepy that he was able to see sort of the directional way that things were going to develop, particularly with stuff that like the fact that this was 1950 and he could predict like drone surveillance was going to be like an actual thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is scary. So some people have said that like if you do the current reality is somewhere in between Brave New World and 1984, but I'd say the Emperor's New Clothes is in there somewhere too. Like the Emperor's still naked.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting because like then the one person that called out the Emperor for being naked, instead of that breaking the paradigm, most people are like, "You're racist," and I'm like, "Oh, well."
Yeah. So what have you been up to since Canada?
Really just been doing a lot of grinding on Vora and kind of just like businessing. So I've been trying to fundraise. Yeah, and that's kind of occupied most of my time. I had my own like personal story arc with just my own developments with meeting people and kind of having transitioned life from living out in the forest back to the city. So that's been weird in a lot of ways. Interesting. It's having these two different forms of life and the dichotomies that they serve has been really interesting. So on one hand, like living in an urban area, being able to be social with friends and develop new relationships and that kind of stuff has been really great. But on the other side, yeah, like urban environments are really weird, particularly like here in California and like the thing I've noticed the most strongly is that like there's such a strong liberal affect, and trying to talk about anything that's outside of that Overton window is like really sinful. And it's just really concerning that like people are so deeply invested in this presentation of their social values, but like there's no, like I'm always interested in trying to like I don't want to debate, like I want to have discussions and be curious. And so I found it really interesting when like I try to offer curiosity of like, oh, well, like why do you think that way? There's like a snap reactionaryism of like, oh, why do you think that that's wrong? And it's like, no, like I'm just curious. And I'm like, well, like if you're curious and like don't accept it, you must think that I'm wrong. And it's like chill out. Like no, like we're trying to have an intellectual discussion. That's what I enjoy. But yeah, a lot of people find it deeply threatening.
And has it changed any at all? Like in the last couple of years? Like, has the Overton window shifted in San Francisco? Like, or is it everything still taboo?
It shifted, but like in the wrong direction. Like it's redoubled itself in a like, Trump's a fascist, racist Hitler who wants to kill everyone and hates anybody who isn't white. And it's like, well, like, is that true? And they're like, you're a bigot. And it's like, well, hang on. Like, I'm just asking a question. And so like, it's pretty scary actually that like, it feels like a sports game. Like people aren't really actually interested in liberalism winning as much as they're interested in Trump losing. And when you sort of look at their side and the analysis, so like, it's all pretty weird at this point. But the other that I've noticed is that like, if I have a personal relationship with somebody and they like care about me and respect me, I've found that when I go to kick the tires of their belief system, they like deflate pretty quickly. And they go, like I've never thought about it that way. And it's like, you've never thought about if stripping everybody of the right to bear arms could like have a problem with how communism played out in the 20th century? Like, really? Like that like never crossed your mind? They're like, no. It's like, oh, yeah, like that's why Hitler and that's why Stalin and that's why Mao and that's why Pol Pot all stripped people of the right to own weapons before they committed mass genocides. And they're like, so weird. I never knew that. It's like, wow, this is a bit concerning.
And how often do you have these conversations with quote unquote normies?
I mean, it's kind of nice being here at Presidio Bitcoin because like that gives like a good feeder for like, you know, people that are already on the path to the orange pill. I've been dating more frequently. Like this had came up a number of times, like in conversations with women that I had been dating. And I found it interesting because like I found that like that, you know, they had just been drinking from the mass media, like communal fountains. And so anytime we sort of started talking about anything outside the purview of this, I found that they're usually pretty curious, but like, because I don't like fit in the bucket really well. Like I'm not a conservative, I'm not a liberal. And so like, if you're not one of those two, it's like, what are you? And so it was like, yeah, like I have a mixture of different beliefs that come from first principles, in my opinion, that like are pretty important. And I've like thought about them deeply. And then when you discover that like, really, my experience has been most people haven't thought very deeply about any of this stuff. They just sort of take whatever the narrative has been given to them by the media. So like another interesting one is like the Palestinian-Israeli issue. And you talk to people and they're like, well, if you don't support the freedom of Palestinians, like that means like you're a racist, hateful person. It goes, look, like I totally do. Like I've followed this conflict since it began at the birth of the state of Israel, but also like is killing people really the solution here? Is that like really what we want to be the answer on either side? And like, is there any way to address this? And I always get into like, you know, for me, Bitcoin defunding this sort of war nation state thing is really important. And then I asked them like, well, what do you think the relationship between like capital and people's ability to make money through like defense companies has within this? And they're usually like, like I never thought about who was profiting from the war.
No. Nuance is always lost when people follow mainstream media things. Hello there, children. Have you ever thought about a $5 wrench attack or $15 wrench attack? What if someone were to hit you on the head and try to take your Bitcoin with this? Bitcoin transactions are irreversible, and if someone else gets access to your private keys, your money is gone. BitVault is the first Bitcoin wallet that protects you from both physical and digital attacks. It upgrades security with multi-sig and time lock, which is a very interesting feature of Bitcoin. This means that transactions are locked for 2 hours to 15 days, giving you enough time to intervene and revert the transaction so the money goes back to you, even though the attacker thinks they got access to the money. So head to bitvault.sv to secure your lifetime subscription now. There are only 42 of those available for $199. Time is running out. Yeah, but the reason I wanted to have you on today is like I wanted to really unpack your thoughts on the whole Knots versus Core debacle, because
speaking of nuance.
Speaking of nuance, exactly, because we briefly touched on it in Calgary, but I don't think we ever had a deeper conversation. And the reason is a tweet you made about like the definition of money and the definition of spam, and like that there's nuance there. But I reacted to it because to me it's very clear, like what spam is. It's something I don't want to store. Like it's stuff I don't want. And to me, money is also very clear. It's whatever society chooses as its primary medium of exchange over space and time. But do you have different definitions to this, or do you agree to those definitions? And so let's start there.
Yeah, again, with the nuance. So it's like first dividing between money and value. And so it's like, so could something, you just said money over space and time. And so like, does that?
Yeah, I can clarify that a bit because like I hate the dichotomy between store value and medium exchange. So the thing I'm trying to introduce, which is sort of in the Misesian tradition here, I think, the way I interpret it anyway, is that you can't really store value since value is subjective and dynamic at all times. So I prefer the term medium of exchange over space and time because I think the dichotomy is false. You need both sides of that coin. You need, like, gold wasn't very good as a medium of exchange over space because you couldn't divide it and it's heavy to carry around. Fiat is not very good over time because someone can print more of it and therefore it loses value over time. So Bitcoin is the type of money that solves both problems, and therefore it's superior to the other monies that have been tried in the past because it solves both. And I think you can't really have one without the other and have a functioning money system that scales. Would you agree to that? And like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So that you can't really have one without the other. Because this reminds me of an Adam Smith quote where he talks about like something to the effect of like gold is just like a dead stock, but like with paper money, it has like wagon wheels that like allow for it to like float over. And so like, while there is this relationship between the two, and I think they need each other, to me, this is sort of what it comes back to with the spam issue of that. So for example, like, I think it's been pretty clear across the board, like nobody really wants this garbage on the chain, but because of the way that Bitcoin can take different data sets and store those in it, like there isn't a total capacity. So that's one issue of it. The other is that like, to me, it's super important that we put 3D printed guns, like open source LLM plans. Like there are certain things that to me, it's been worthwhile for individuals to have use this highly inefficient database to like store information. So like one is like 3D printed guns. Like I think it's really important that Bitcoin as being the most prominent and decentralized form of money that we've had, that like tucked inside of that database, like you can actually pull out these plans for 3D printed weapons. I think that's like a really important thing. And we've seen that play out in such as like the Myanmar conflict and civil war, like people are actually printing out 3D guns and like changing sort of the topology of that conflict. So to me, like, first of all, like this has all gone way off in the weeds because at the first it's just presented as like, well, do we want to filter spam or not? And it's like, well, I think we'd all agree that like if it was possible for us just to filter them out, that would be good. But then there's a number of other problems that, did you see the most recent, I forget, there was a whole thread that Peter Wu did on delving Bitcoin that sort of went pretty deep into all this. And so to me, like the biggest problem that's coming out of this is miner centralization and what ends up happening when we sort of have this divergence between people running different versions.
Yeah. Because miner centralization is a much bigger problem, in my opinion, and I think in yours too, right?
Yeah.
Miner centralization is like what miner doesn't. So let me see if you agree to this statement. So the problem with miner centralization, in my opinion, is like I don't think the miners, even if they are centralized and it's one actor owning most of them, I don't think they want to shoot themselves in the foot. But you don't have this robust incentive structure. You have sort of but they wouldn't do that because that would be stupid kind of incentive structure. And you want the incentive structure to be more, the scaffolding of this entire thing, if you will, to be more robust than that. Yes. You want the nodes to be in charge, basically. And you don't want the miners to be in charge. So you want like nodes to have a say in what miners do in that sense. So miner centralization is a problem because you have a weaker incentive structure. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, but I wouldn't go so far as that, like, I want nodes to have power over miners. Like, to me, the sort of relationship is very similar to sort of like how we made the American government, not like we wanted to decentralize powers amongst different actors within the system. And so I had some good notes here that I totally lost. But one was that, like, essentially, like, nodes' jobs are to be able to like select transactions, and then miners' jobs are to essentially take the selection of those transactions and include them in blocks. And so we're lucky enough to have BitDevs hosted here at Presidio Bitcoin. And so we went deep into this topic last week before I was going, but they were pointing out that there's just a number of issues when you start running these different instances in the way that one is that like through transaction selections that like you'd need to have like 95% of nonce nodes to be able to like have a meaningful affect of being able to actually filtering out JPEGs. But they're also pointing out, and because I'm not so technically inclined, it's difficult for me to follow all of these, but they were saying that the discrepancy between how blocks get built, that this gives an advantage to centralized miners insofar that like now that they can start mining blocks sooner, that this gives them a lead in the next block. And so like it becomes sort of problematic from that standpoint, as far as I understand.
Yeah, it sounds a bit far-fetched to me. And also like the counterpoint to that is that Core 30, the latest upgrade that is blowing up the op return default to 100 kilobytes instead of 80 bytes, that would also need like just as knots would need 90, I don't think it's 95%. I think it's around 90 for the filters to be effective. The Core 30 would need like 10% of the hash rate to actually be effective in the other direction, like that people actually upgrade to that. So there's something to be said for that too, that the Core 30 upgrade also needs quite a lot of traction to actually be a thing. And I know a lot of node runners that both mining nodes and non-mining nodes and economic nodes and non-economic nodes that simply won't upgrade to Core 30 for a while because they want to see how this thing plays out first. And I think that's quite a likely scenario, that people simply won't upgrade when the thing is released.
And that's kind of one of the great things about Bitcoin is that like, and also just to be clear, is like, I think we're all debating about like how we want to pop a zit exactly. Like it's inconvenient and difficult, but like, I don't think this ends Bitcoin in any way. And it's also refreshing that like people just keep running 29 as long as they want to, you know, like it's not going to cause huge problems in the long run. There are certain discrepancies, but the system continues to function.
So I'm gonna push back, devil's advocate, the whole importance of putting gun schematics on the blockchain a bit, because I could maybe agree to that a hash of a document containing such a schematic is fine because it's so small that it's insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But I think if you think about real estate being used as a store of value now in fiat land, that means that the billionaire buys out all the beachside property, a beachfront property, and therefore nobody lives there, because one guy has bought all the stuff, because he's not buying it to use it as housing for human beings. He's using it as a store of value because the money is broken, right?
Sure.
So therefore, real estate is now worse at its original function as being houses for people. You know what I mean?
The way that I would push back on that is that like, well, it's like our primary concern with housing for people, or the fact that the billionaire has enough money to buy out that land at that price point versus, you know, because he just wants it for his joy to never have to see other human beings, versus other people want to have it be a place that they can do development for housing specifically.
Yeah, but I think that's obviously half of the story, I would say, because the other half of the story is that real estate holds value better than the dollar does, since it goes up in price when it should really go down if you use the correct denominator, which is Bitcoin. So you would rather hold Bitcoin than hold, like, Bitcoin is sort of solving that problem already by having having it not be diluted. So it is objectively better. 10 years ago, if you bought Bitcoin, you would have been much better off than if you bought a house. Like, no matter what house on the entire planet you bought, right? Which objectively makes real estate better as housing for human beings. But the point I want to get to is, I think the inverse of that is true for money. So if money has other use cases than purely monetary use cases, like purely medium of exchange use cases, then they become worse as a medium of exchange. Because just as gold is a bit worse as a medium of exchange because it's used for jewelry, and it's used in some industrial use cases. And it actually makes I think there's a Hayekian argument, but it actually makes gold a worse form of money because it misprices. You introduce another value vector, if you will, so that it gets mispriced. And I think this is exactly the same that happens to Bitcoin. But in Bitcoin, it's worse because any arbitrary data that is like clogging the UTXO set or just putting shit there in general, it is making it costlier to run a node, and it's making it costlier to start up a node. It's making it costlier to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange as intended. It's making all of these things costlier. So you have that effect. So in my opinion, like, since this is forever money, potentially, everything that isn't a medium of exchange transaction, that isn't a monetary transaction, should be fought with everything we've got. That's the rationale. Like, if we can make it only a tiny set costlier to put shit in there, even if it's good, well-intentioned, like the gun schematics you were talking about, then we should absolutely block it.
That's well-intentioned.
Yeah.
That's the way we look at the world.
This is the point we've got to in our own little, panopticon.
So like I sat next to Lauren, who did, like, he's the one that pushed the changes for version 30. We had a number of pretty robust discussions about this because, this is difficult to wrap your head around. And so one of the things that I think is from my conclusions is that part of the objectives of raising the op return is to essentially look like op return's like a trash can, like you can put shit in and people can prune it off later. And so that trying to increase the size set was a harm reduction step. And that, like, look, if people want to put a big chunk of data in Bitcoin, they could put it in the op return and then people can prune that off later.
Yeah, but here's the argument against that. To me, that's like having your mailbox outside your house and you get a lot of advertisements in it and you want less of them because you find them annoying because the proper mail is not getting through as it should. So what you do is you put a giant trash can next to the mailbox and you hope that they will put their shit there. But there is no guarantee that they will. It's still cheaper to put it in the witness data, for instance. Like you have the like I'm not super technical with this, but you have the witness data discount, right? Segwit discount. So it's still cheaper for them to put it there than to put it in op return. So why would they? I think what is likelier if you introduce something like that is that they will both do the bad shit and do some new other bad shit in op return. Like, why not? Because now you've just given them another avenue to spam and another set of idiots to fool. Like, you can come up with some other. Now there's all of a sudden op return wizards that put shit in op return. Like, and in addition to all the other shit, like there's always another idiot to fool out there that you can own a picture, which you can't. Like,
yeah, and like, so one of the other questions is like, can we stop the people from putting the junk mail in our mailbox? Like, is that a possibility?
And like, the question is really, is it effective to install the trash can to incentivize them to do that or not?
Well, is it harmful to install the trash can? That's what I'd say. Cause like, I can like hang out outside my house with a shotgun and like wait for spammers to come by and be like, get off my porch. And like, that's probably going to have efficiency if I'm willing to hang out there with a shotgun all day. But like, that's not really my best and highest use time. I don't want this trash to be in my mailbox. So if I put a trash can there, like, maybe they won't use it. And it would be unfortunate if they don't. But they could. And so like, it's kind of like a harm reduction thing. Same thing like, I don't want people doing heroin, but like, they're gonna do heroin. And I really don't like their nasty needles just being dumped on the side of the road. So like, I can install a needle disposal box. Is it inconvenient for the heroin users to like, go put it in the box as opposed to dumping it elsewhere? Yeah, probably. Are they always going to use it? No. But like, does it reduce some needles? Maybe. And like, that's kind of the ultimate objective. And also like, I just want to point out, like, I think we're all a lot closer on this issue than we think, but I think because of the contentiousness of, and who would have known, it turns out that Twitter's not the best place to have nuanced dialogue. It's really wild. I thought that's what the platform was used for. Because also like, I've had the opportunity to meet and talk with a lot of core developers about this. And like, I don't think that they're nefarious or nasty people. I think most of them have a deep care for Bitcoin and want to make sure it's developed. I think that they have a special autistic way of looking at Bitcoin that's highly technical and highly neglectful towards the social aspect, which is pretty funny. I remember like 6 months ago when all of this kind of got started, another prominent Bitcoin developer was like, oh, like this will just blow over. Like, don't worry, this won't be. And I was like, no, man. I was like, you don't understand that this whole thing's going to become a shit show because there's feedback that you're getting from the plebs that they don't like this, and you're like not listening to them at all. You're not even giving them credence because you just return to like, oh, this is just a technical argument. And it was funny because we made the point to them. We're like, yes, however, you're explaining a technical argument to a non-technical group, which thereby makes it a social problem. And unless you actually take the time and energy to really deeply explain this, respect other individuals with their opinions and ideas, really hear them out and address each one, it's going to become more problematic. And lo and behold, it did. And so like, that's sort of where I think we're at right now. And like, I'm not really sure if this is resolvable in a meaningful way outside of, we could try a hard fork or a soft fork, but like that would suck. And like, it would create more problems than it would. In addition to like, I just have this really deep concern about like how this could play out in mining centralization. And the other one that like has me from doubling down is, like it seems that most people, not only on core, but that seem to have other technicals like Erik Cason and a few others, like definitely see the value in raising the op return limit. And so like with me not being technical enough, like I don't have, I have a hard time putting myself in a camp against them because like maybe there's something I'm missing here that I don't understand technically, which is kind of part of what I got from Lawrence as well. Because he explained a lot of this to me, but a lot of it was definitely beyond my pay grade. So,
yeah, but I'm in a similar position, but I still have like the to me the core functionality of Bitcoin is like crystal clear. It should be money, like, and as little else as possible. Like in my perfect world, Satoshi wouldn't even have inscribed the Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. I want it to be purely money, like because of the reasons I said before. Because the purer it is, the better it functions as money. So and this whole term, technically knowledgeable, like, why does that matter at all if you're not economically literate? Like, because of exactly what you said, if your actions have a social impact like this, so that people act in a way that made the problem worse, in a way, the thing you were trying to solve, then you can call that technical knowledge all day, but you missed you as the technical person or the developer, you sort of missed the social aspect, which is all money. Money is all about social aspects. Like it is, after all, just a way for human beings to interact with each other socially. That's what it is at its core. It's expressing value to someone. So if you don't have that, then the technical skills sort of don't matter, because you're building something that you don't understand. Like, and I think this, like, the way I like to see it is two circles in a Venn diagram. And you have knowledge about computers and knowledge about economics. And ideally you want the Bitcoiners to be in the intersection, right? And if they aren't, they are probably not good for Bitcoin if they're actually working on it.
Maybe. I mean, like on some level, I think it helps them have a clear viewpoint because they don't necessarily see the social pressures, but also because I wanted to ask you as well. It's like, I think a lot about the idea of like, if I take $100 bill and I draw a dick on it, and someone wants to pay me $500 to get my dick dollar, like they're stupid because like it's just a dick that I drew on a dollar bill. But like if they want to pay me 5 times the amount for that, that seems to be beneficial to me. They seem to be stupid enough to believe that. And lo and behold, over time, it turns out that the dick on the $100 bill isn't worth the $500 that they said it was. But like I profited from that. It was good for me. And I just wonder about this with like the stupid JPEGs and stuff. Cause like, as we all called from years ago, like none of this shit has played out. None of it's going to come back. Also, like, I think ordinals are down like 98% in terms of not only price point, but usage. And so like, I wonder if this just resolves itself on its own, of that like this scam gets played enough that like people get that it's like the Nigerian prince. But the other one is also like long-term in terms of the security budget. You know, like we're at a Bitcoin all-time price high right now. And like blocks are, you know, like the fee is like what, 1 stat per V byte or something right now. And so like, could this secondary function serve to kind of help shore up fees in some way? If, you know, like even with where it's at right now, people don't seem to be using it for data storage. So like, I don't know. A lot of this just strikes me as that there's a lot going on that, I don't know, maybe we've blown this over too much.
Couple of points. The dick drawn on the dollar, I mean, you can print more dollars, you can print more Bitcoins, and the dick that you print on Bitcoin will be there forever, and it will always be costly to download because everyone needs to download the dick every time they want to start up a new node. Like, there's no way to get rid of the dick, at least not in the startup phase. And the other thing is, where were we at with this? I lost my train of thought.
We're talking about dicks.
I was talking about dicks, was I? For once. No, but another thing, I lost that. It probably wasn't that important. But the thing is, with the minor centralization thing, so simple question then, how does increasing the op return limit default fix minor centralization? Like, what's the thing?
I think from my understanding, it's not that the op return fixing, but it's now that we have this divergence between NOTS nodes and like core 30 nodes. And because of the way that they're actually creating block templates creates a divergence between the two. And that I think I'm gonna butcher the shit out of this, so I probably shouldn't go into it. There's better details online. And so like this also goes to show that like I try to recuse myself and that like I don't think I should have a strong opinion here because like I don't really fully get what's going on. And that's why I've kind of defaulted to some more intelligent people that understand this more technically than I understand. And the other one that I think is interesting as, you know, again, I'm fortunate to be around like a highly technical crowd. And I find even a lot of them have hesitancy about it and being like, look, like there's others who get more about this than me. And I'm hesitant to kind of throw my hat in the ring. But I'm just suspicious of when people come out saying that they're 100% right about they know the solution. And it's like, you know, we're dealing with a pretty massive project here that could have long-standing consequences. So like maybe we all should just slow down. And I do think one of the things where Core made a huge mistake was because they didn't want to succumb to any sort of social pressure and show that social pressure could kind of modify the project. I think that it was kind of like kids tug of war over a particular object of them being like, no, I have it. No, I have it. And like, it sort of played out that way as opposed to everybody being like, let's chill out. Let's have robust discussion. Maybe let's like lock this for the next 6 months and really filter out the whole debate of like what we're trying to talk about here.
Good one. But isn't that the whole reason for why people are so upset is because why can't you just leave it be and don't touch it and don't change this default to this absurd size? Like, after all, Core are the ones who want to change Bitcoin here. Like, not so is the more conservative standpoint in that sense.
So from my understanding of the conversations that I had, it's that, and this is sort of the big irony, is like people are worried about UTXO bloat. Like that, it is a problem. And so one of the thoughts was that by increasing the op return limit could get people to put that information into op return specifically, and then op return could actually get pruned later down the line. I'm not sure like if the incentives necessarily line up there because of how the witness discount operates and other things. But I think that was ultimately the hope, and that they saw it as a harm reduction potentiality versus leaving where it was currently.
Yeah. So, but I think the reaction is to exactly that because it's so vague. Like it's such a like, but please, if you're going to spam, could you please do it here? We're going to introduce something. It's not really going to be better for you, but it would be better for the network. So could you please put it here? Like, it's not guaranteed at all, is it?
Yeah, you can definitely throw your heroin needle on the street and be like, fuck you. I do heroin and don't care about you. And like, well, and like on the other side is like, do we have the capacity to hang out on our porch with shotguns and like shoot people that want to put heroin needles in our mailbox, or is that unavailable? And as far as I can tell, it seems like we don't really have a good enforcement mechanism around like what way that we can dictate what are good transactions and what aren't, just because that's sort of how the network works, right?
Yeah, and if we had those blueprints for 3D printed shotguns, we could kill the heroinists or chase them away.
Let me talk to some of the ordinals folks, and I'll get back to you, and you can have different colored weapons.
No, okay. So let's just admit, I can fully admit that I'm not technical enough to understand all the nuances here either. But I think I got which is why I wanted to talk to you about it, because it's about the philosophical impacts of it and the deeper philosophical debate underlying all of this. Like, what is not only spam and transactions and money, but what is consensus? Like, what is all of this? What is all of this really? And how do you, in what way should, like Bitcoiners, we are the network, and how do we influence it to influence human behavior in a way that we are okay with? Like, I don't know, hard to formulate a question even, because it's so nuanced.
In all honesty, like, I think to me, it's become very clear that essentially like the technical and the non-technical are a division. But like, this is just classic how Roman society was, is that like the technical are the patricians and the non-technical like are the plebeians. The patricians, like the wealthy class that makes laws and debates them and does all of that. The plebeians are the ones that like work. They were deprived of the right to vote the Senate directly. But like in classic Rome, like, so this is how the Roman Republic was first made. This relationship was very contentious because like the patricians had all the power and the plebeians had no way that they could do something with it. And ironically, the way that the plebs dealt with this is like they actually like left the city of Rome. They all went to the sacred mountain and refused to like go back to Rome until the patricians acknowledged that they had a particular veto power that they could have over the Senate when they elected laws that they really didn't like. I think that Bitcoiners need their own tribune of the plebs so that like node runners can essentially like elect their representative to core that can then actually like talk to core and be like, hey, like all of the node runners are pissed off at what you guys are trying to do. Let's have a real conversation about that. Because like, in all honesty, as difficult and complex as this conversation is, I think with someone that has enough social acumen to be able to sit down, be jovial, build a good relationship, and to come into it with good faith, I think that there could be a discussion that could be had that could have negotiated through it. I think that opportunity is kind of lost opportunity.
You're on fire today.
Sorry. I feel like that's been lost, unfortunately, and it's because it's prunable. But in reality, like that's sort of what needs to happen. And that, like, that's where I think Core really failed here, is that like they haven't had a good, I don't even want to call it a spokesperson, but there needs to be this sort of facilitation, and like that they don't have to do anything either. Like they're a project independent. That's one of the great things that I do see about Knots, is that like there does need to be other implementations. And I do think that it would be really nice to see there be something else outside of Core. And the other thing is like, I don't know enough of the technical details about Knots, but I have had people point out that there are certain things that are a bit problematic about it. And I'd love to see more diversity in implementation. Like, I think it's kind of weird that Saylor has made so much money from Bitcoin, and that like, I don't know, he should just set up like an alternative core process for like something totally outside of it that maybe like can be corporate Bitcoiners. But you know, that's sort of my philosophical belief, is that there's been a real breakdown in dialogue. And like, because Twitter is like the worst fucking place to have this dialogue, in addition to we don't really understand how it's being manipulated, but maybe Nostr has some kind of better solution that we could use for voting or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, in 2017, when the whole block size wars played out, Twitter was a huge part of it. And like people were debating there. And I think it had a great impact on why we won, so to speak, why the plebs won over the big money of Bitcoin that time around. Then again, maybe it was a victory that wasn't as much of a victory as we thought, because now blocks can be 4 megabytes instead of 1 megabyte. So we did agree to an increase, even though it wasn't the increase they wanted. So there still was an increase. And maybe that wasn't for the better. And the SegWit discount was supposed to incentivize UTXO consolidation, right? But it introduced this cheaper way of putting arbitrary data. So was it wise? It's very hard to tell in hindsight, and which is why this is Bitcoin is the most robust and the most fragile system at the same time. It's like Schrodinger's robustness.
Yeah, because the moment once looking at the problem, it starts becoming more problematic. So stop paying attention.
It's take a chill pill and just relax.
But I mean, it's interesting because I don't. It would be really interesting if there could be a greater forum to sort of have these discussions. Yeah, and a wider. It's so interesting that we have all of these Bitcoin conferences, but there isn't more of a. Maybe a convention to be able to propose and debate these things. It's sort of interesting, and it goes with the lack of a general political structure. But maybe that's kind of the next thing that is necessary is for people to somehow have greater dialogues about these things. Because maybe it turns out the witness discount was a mistake. The other thing is transaction malleability had to be fixed. That was a real problem. But I mean, I think. And the other is how do we convey these deeply technical and difficult ideas and distill them down in a way that my lack of technical understanding could use some help digesting it a bit better. And that's one of the places that I think Core, I would love to see them get outside of sort of their autistic technical bubble and be able to be I'm doing a bad job communicating here. I need some help from somebody who isn't necessarily as technical as me and can maybe process this for us in a particular way.
Yeah, they should have a Matthew Crader of their own, sort of a guy that's very, very good at talking about the stuff. I mean, he's obviously biased to the Knots camp and explaining that from that perspective very well. But there's no real equivalent on the Core side. I mean, you have Adam Back and his supposed intern doing all the debating, and these points are hard to get across. I think what the rationale behind the change is, and and also there might be something to this is a pet theory, and I don't know how true it is, but maybe developers they don't have stacks. They are these 180 IQ brilliant Silicon Valley geniuses that are going to be well off regardless. They can always find jobs. They have high paying gigs everywhere being thrown at them on the street. And instead they choose to work on Bitcoin and they get these grants. They can live well off of them, I guess. They're not unfunded. But that means that they don't really need to have stacks of Bitcoin, which means they don't need to have skin in the game, which means they might be more prone to fiddle around with the thing when what they ought to do is just don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of attitude. So do you think there's something there, that there's a problem with developers not having stacks or not having big enough stacks?
My particular vibe is that that hasn't struck me as being true. It could be possible for some. I do know that the grantees are paid directly in Bitcoin.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I think it would be cooler if there was a time lock mechanism that I don't know, maybe it took, because this is something we're thinking about doing at Vora for our employees, is that we take the current price point, we time lock it over a 4-year period, and it pays out whatever your wage would be for the next 4 years accordingly. And if Bitcoin does its thing of going up and to the right, 4 years from now when the price is quadrupled, you're incentivized that much more to be working because you're essentially getting paid 4x over whatever the fiat income was. I think one of the biggest things that we've sort of determined here is, again, I like this patrician plebeian divide, because even if they're a broke 180 IQ software developer, just same with being a patrician, you're going to find a way to go off and make money doing stuff, whether it's making Google AdWords slightly more effective or working on a great open source project. And I think maybe one of the things that could get addressed within this is essentially, like I said, like having some intermediary between core and the rest. And like the most interesting one though is that like this has to get presented in a way that, and again, like I don't know if like electable is the right term that we want here, but like they need to be able to act as a spokesperson sort of on their own accord. And that like once they get to the position, like you're like locked into the position for a year or something, and you could kind of get paid irregardless of what you're doing. Or maybe like you can have people like teach you or something. I don't know. But there needs to be a way that like they can't just be accountable to core. They need to be like accountable to like this greater mission of Bitcoin. But like, I don't really know how you do that. And that's why I keep referring back to the tribune of the plebs, because that's what they did. They literally just would have their own way to elect somebody. Once that person was elected, they sort of represented their values to the Senate, and they had a veto over Senate.
Well, isn't that how the system is supposed to work? Isn't that just what's playing out now? Like core is making a decision that the plebs don't like, so they start running knots instead. Isn't that exactly what that is? Like a pleb rebelling against the patricians? Like that's the mechanism as far as I know, or like as I view it, that is the mechanism. Like if it's voluntary to run the software, so you run other software if you don't agree with the changes.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Because I mean, like all of the software is still in consensus with one another, despite the fact that there are policy differences that are sort of creating these discrepancies. But like it all is still working. It's kind of interesting because I feel like this debate is, like in terms of the whole op return debate, it's interesting because on one side, I feel like it's getting a little more contentious, but I feel like even in the contentiousness that like the weediness of the whole problem is displaying itself more. And I can't help but think of that, like perhaps there just needs to be a larger symposium for people to really speak about this in a particular way that allows for everything to get synthesized. But I don't know. I'm pretty exhausted of this issue at this point in time, frankly. It's like one of those, like let's just go have a beer at the pub and let it blow over,
Gloves up. We know of a knockout Bitcoin wallet. It's the Bitbox 02 Nova Edition, and you can get it at bitbox.swiss. This little thingy has the latest security chip, and you can plug it straight into your iPhone, and it's an overall awesome device. The software interface is super smooth, and it's a very secure hardware wallet. They're one of the oldest hardware wallets in the business. So go to bitbox.swiss/infinity and check out the new Nova edition of the Bitbox right now. Code Infinity gets you a discount. And if you go to bitbox.swiss/infinity, you will automatically get that discount. So there. $15 wrench attacks are one thing, but what if you die? You need some inheritance planning. We have some very wonderful Aussie friends that can take care of that for you. They're called the Bitcoin Advisor. You find them at the Bitcoin Advisor with an ER, not an OR at the end.com. And they can secure your Bitcoins for generations for a very low fee. So go to bitcoinadvisor.com and check out their inheritance planning stuff right now. Talk to me about Vora instead, like the thing you're working on. What is that? And like, explain it to the listeners, please.
Yeah, more or less, we sort of see that like in the future, people need to have a real home for their digital life. And in the age of AI that we're going into, like the ability to exfiltrate, to execute 0 days, to chain together novel attacks is going to become easier and easier because you could just go to the AI and request it. So the web is going to get increasingly less and less secure. And so this all started from a sort of a project that me and my partner, Jesse Posner, started of that. We're like, what if we could just make a super high-end Bitcoin vault that like, this could be the place that like could be your super hardware wallet that from top to bottom, it would be totally transparent, open source, verifiable. And you know that there was no capacity for there to be supply chain attacks for like, this is going to be like the most paranoid individual's place that they can store Bitcoin so they can have total security with it. So we started essentially doing the layout, designing, like this tiered security order of like, there's air-gapped hardware security module in that. There's then like an isolated framework inside of the computer that information can be stored. There's then outside of that, a place that actually touches the internet for you to be able to run a full node and to be able to do silent payments. So we really started with making, and being like, essentially a price point isn't a problem. How would we design the most beautiful, kick-ass ability for you to have a Bitcoin hardware wallet that you know is rock solid. And as we develop this more, we're like, oh, like it turns out all of the same stuff that you need to have the highest grade of Bitcoin security is also what you're going to want to have for like your own personal data. But also like if you actually want to have a self-custodied AI that you're training on your own, has all of its own data, like you're not giving all of that information to Elon Musk or Sam Altman or Google or whoever. You need to have that live locally and you need to train it locally and you need to be able to change all of the parameters you want locally. So that's when we sort of were like, oh, this is like kind of a home for your digital life. Because in the future, we want this to be a machine that everybody can have. It's plug and play. These vaults will have their own ability to sort of exchange their own cryptographic primers to sort of communicate with each other on their own sort of protocol level. I mean, maybe using anything from Nostr relays to other things. And so this has become like a much larger project now that we're trying to build this piece of hardware explicitly to be able to not only protect your Bitcoin, but sort of all of your digital data way better than a normal computer. Because most normal computers have all kinds of opaque code running on it, like the chips can be backdoored. There's all sorts of sort of problems of that. You really start to realize, like down at the most basic level of how a computer functions, that the idea of having actual free and open source software and hardware running the whole thing, it's kind of a fantasy right now. And so our goal is to essentially really get this sort of computer out in the world that is from silicon to software, totally open source, transparent, and verifiable, so that you can know with absolute certainty that for the next 100 years, if you're running Bitcoin on this, that like it's going to be secure and there isn't going to be a way for somebody to actually steal your Bitcoin.
Cool. It's that sounds like a big project. Like there's a lot to do there, I guess.
Yeah, there's an absolute shit ton to do. And so it's been pretty interesting kind of getting into it, and very similar to this not score debate, realizing one, like there's a lot of technical trials here that I don't have full understanding of. But with that being said, there are other people out there that have those technical prowls, and providing them a space to actually work on and build something that they really care about is meaningful and could really make a substantial impact in the future if we execute around this vision and get it done. And so it's been pretty serendipitous seeing the number of different people who we cross paths with who like have the perfect skill set for us, and to start bringing them on the team, kind of talking to them about what do you want to build? What's important for you to see in the future? How can we partner on this? And how can we hire you to build what we need you to build, but also provide you the space to create and be thoughtful in your expression about how you want to build this stuff. And I've found it's pretty interesting in giving people the opportunity to work on something they care about that maybe won't pay as much as working on something that will make them a ton of money. A lot of people will actually choose the thing that they care about, because like people are pretty nihilistic in this world and really want stuff to care about. And so that's been really cool to see that play out.
Yeah. Have you talked to the Start9 people? It sounds like similar to what Start9 is doing.
Yeah. I had a great conversation with Matt Hill this last year. I have a lot of respect for him and what they're building. The way that we see it is Start9, first of all, like it's not a hardware wallet, you know, like you
No.
still need to have your cold card or whatever if you do want to be able to have offline storage. So we're integrating all of this into one package. The other is because we want to do all of this AI stuff as well. Like we want there to be add-ons that you can add GPU cards, that you have an isolated area that you can sort of play with that. And also we ultimately want people to be able to do decentralized data storage and use the vaults directly to essentially be able to stream Lightning back and forth to one another, and also have robust recoverability. Like my partner, Jesse, developed a really interesting recovery system that we feel really confident about, is like a game changer for the way that people will be able to actually recover not only their Bitcoin private keys, but like all of their data if they need to. Even if you lose your phone and your computer and like somebody robs your house of all of the stuff, that there's still going to be a way to do recovery that's pretty thoughtful. So
yeah, super cool project. Good. Best of luck with all of it, of course. It sounds really cool.
It's been quite a grind, but it's been fun as well.
Yeah, we just got a new sponsor on the show here called BitVault, which is a very interesting project. They're working with like as a multi-sig and a time lock at the same time, sort of to give you a window to do what you can to recover your stuff before the attacker can spend it. So
Nice.
it's a pretty cool setup.
Nice.
And
Yeah, our recoverability functions have something similar baked into it as well. So
yeah, super cool. I mean, time locking is underrated as fuck. I've always been fascinated by that you can actually like talk about medium exchange over time. You just shoot money into the future.
yeah,
I think
and then the fact that you can actually have like depreciating multi-sig over time as well. So that after 12 months, it reduces to like 2 keys. And after like 2 years, it reduces down to 1 key. And so like that has some really powerful ramifications for when people start running this stuff.
Yeah. You used the term shitload there before. No, you said shit ton. So in your mind, a shit ton. So a shit ton. So what's bigger, a fuckload or a shit ton? Or a fuck ton or a shitload?
I think a shit ton specifically, like I would say a fuckload is like half of a shit ton.
Yeah, but a fuck ton is bigger than a shit ton, right?
Well, I mean, a fuckload is smaller than a shit ton.
Yeah.
And a fuck ton would be larger than a shitload. So.
Yeah, I agree to that. But what's bigger, a shit ton or a fuck ton?
A fuck ton. A fuck ton is bigger than a shit ton.
We're on the same page here.
Okay, I'm happy that we don't have to go into a deeper debate about that one.
All right. We've addressed a whole bunch of things here. Anything else on your mind while we're at it? Like, did we miss something here? Like,
it's pretty funny that we're at like an all-time high, and I don't think we even mentioned that.
No,
so like that's nice. I mean, to me, that's like a really great indicator that like we're probably in store for more all-time highs, because like when nobody gives a fuck that it's an all-time high, that's like a pretty clear indicator that we're in a bull market. I mean, I think it's interesting, like the nonce versus core debate, that it's been so contentious in particular ways. I think at the end of the day, like we're all sort of on a similar path and mission, and like we don't want to get too off into the weeds trying to debate about these sort of nascent technical aspects. Yeah, and to me, like I would just like to see greater collaboration and dialogue, along with just sort of friendlier. Yeah, like I always want everybody that is participating in Bitcoin's development and creation to feel welcome to actually have open dialogue with one another. Open dialogue that can be contentious, but also like it doesn't necessarily have to have us be reducing down to ad hominem attacks or otherwise. Like I think we all have different opinions, different ways to do it. We might even feel pretty emotional about that. But I don't think we need to have that reduced down to attacking people in general, just because they have different viewpoints of the world.
No, I agree to that fully. There's one caveat though, and that is shitcoiners and spammers and scammers, because I don't think we ought to like even let them into the debate. If you by your actions show that you don't give a shit about Bitcoin's future because you're clogging the fucking UTXO shit set with shit, then your opinion doesn't count anymore. Like I think to me, that's obvious that this is a person who does not deserve my comment, my like, or my retweet even. This is a pig who loves to wrestle, because either way, the pig wins because he likes getting dirty. Like, you don't want to give shitcoiners attention. Like, and this is how I view my role, is like to point that out, that you're being scammed by these people. You cannot own a JPEG. It's like owning a star in the Andromeda galaxy. You can have a certificate that says that you own it, but your ability to do something with it is exactly the same as everyone else on Earth's ability to do anything with it. And it's the same with a JPEG on the blockchain. It's there, but it's there for everyone else too. Like, there's nothing there. It's just a giant nothing burger. So I
think for me, the debate of trying to show them in their nakedness is more important. And that I wanted to be very clear that they're a scammer and that they're nihilistic. And like the other thing that I think is more interesting is from the number of these people that I've spoken with, like I don't think it's even clear to them that they're a scammer, which is really interesting because, like, not to be too hyperbolic, but like this is sort of what Hannah Arendt pointed out in The Banality of Evil, that like when you point out someone evil doing evil shit, like they don't have a process to like logically be like, oh no, like I'm engaging in evil shit. And it's just like, they sincerely believe like, well, maybe this art will really be worth, you know, a whole lot more in the future because it's so wonderful and great. People want to own the certificate. It's like, is that actually true? Or like how much money did you make doing this? Like, that's really interesting that you made a bunch of money doing this thing right now. Like, could it actually be that like it's about you making a bunch of money off of poor saps who like don't understand better? And also like shame on the poor saps for like engaging in that game too. Like you're trying to get a shortcut as well because like you thought they're a load of bullshit, just like how people get involved in pyramid schemes because like you believed your friend who was like, no, get in on the pyramid scheme. It'll be great once you get 2 other people in.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And you need to add the US dollar to to those pyramid schemes though. And like, I mean, most people rationalize to themselves that what they're doing is okay. If you're working for the public sector, your salary is literally paid in money that people didn't pay voluntarily. It's stolen,
Mm-hmm.
like it's expropriated. So you are part of a very evil system. It's just that you rationalize it to yourself because democracy. So it's still, as you say, humans do that all the time. There's been countless psychological experiments about this. You've heard about the one with there's an actor and you're supposed to give him electric shocks, but you don't know that it's an actor. And it's like the guy next to you says that, no, it's no problem. He's not in pain. And he's obviously in pain and he passes out and stuff. And people just keep on turning the knob because some authority tells them that it's okay. And so they don't internalize like what the problem of, is what I'm doing right now ethical or not? Like, is it evil or not? So they don't think they're evil when they're doing the thing. And it's everywhere. Like very few people have that, like that moral, actually are on a real moral high ground because they're actually morally better than others. Which is why I love pointing out that shitcoinery is super bad.
Well, it's funny because like to me, that's just it's almost like the recursive structure. That's like the original sin of Bitcoin is like the discovery that is Bitcoin and its creation allowed for other people to go ahead and make shitcoins just as easily as it is, copying Bitcoin's code and whether it's Litecoin or Feathercoin or Ethereum or anything, there always seems to be some new scam that gets to get played out. And like, I think the most unfortunate thing is like, I don't think there's a way to actually oppressively stop that. And so I think the best thing that we can do is presence people to it and be like, look, like you owning this piece of quote art on the blockchain, like, do you really own it? Like, what does it actually mean? Like, is this really about you thinking that you're going to get rich off of this thing in the future? Or because like, I want to provide space that like, if you really believe that like your magical pep or whatever the fuck it is going to do that, like, I'm sorry, because like it's not, and you're going to lose a bunch of money. But like, I don't know what to do. There's a sucker born every minute. And like, This is kind of part of how the economics work. And also like, I think getting to experiment and play with this stuff has importance to it. Cause like I said, having weapons on the blockchain is important to me, but there's just a real danger of, like this is just the sickness of fiat and nihilism. That's like, everybody wants a get rich quick scheme because the idea of working for your money is pretty hard. And it's been interesting to see that over the last 15 years in Bitcoin, we've sort of showed that like, while this is a nascent system that's still developing, that like having a truly deflationary currency and something that actually works as real savings against, the giant sucking sound of fiat, it works. So instead of you trying to play the get rich quick game or be a day trader or whatever, just stack, just dollar cost average, keep saving Bitcoin. You're going to go through your first 4-year cycle of the anxiety of the possibility that you made the wrong decision. You'll have to deal with price swings and otherwise. But I can almost guarantee that by the end of that 4-year cycle, your savings is probably going to have accrued more value than it had before. It's probably going to do it more so than any other thing. And then it turns out that like, it's just the proof of work mechanism of you putting hard work into actually saving in a vehicle that meaningfully saves. And like, I think that's going to right a lot of the things that are pretty wrong with the world right now, including, and as we've both witnessed, like this sort of bloom of Bitcoiners coming out in the world and realizing that like, hey, through me having an ethical assertion that like money is actually this pristine object that should save us in terms of actually offering savings, in a way that no human institute in the nihilistic shithole world that we've sort of developed together can do, maybe there's a new opportunity for something different. and an opportunity for us to actually have a fair chance at sharing in a global economy, getting to sell to other people that want. And this is one of the things I really want to see more of that we're already seeing is just a more robust development of like a circular economy with Bitcoiners and being able to transact with each other. And I think that that's really important that we keep that mission in front of us as opposed to sort of letting the strikes and PayPals and, treasury companies of the world overtake Bitcoin and make it into a financial object as opposed to an object of freedom.
No, if that happens, I think it's doomed because it needs to be anarchy money to function. Like otherwise, the plebs are not in control at all anymore, and we need to have some control of this thing for it to work. Yeah,
and I think that that's where we find our strongest points of agreement, and I hope that other people, whether it's core or nonce or anything in between, that like we remember that like, hey, even though we're like off in the weeds debating about this pretty nascent topic, we all have the same objective that like we want to free ourselves from fiat money, that Bitcoin is the best solution to do that. And we should find the best ways to work together to make sure that we do that. And I think on the last level is that like, there's been a lot larger problems that Bitcoin has overcame before. And so we'll figure out how to overcome this one. It's probably just going to take some more time and dialogue to get there.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, is there anywhere you want to send our listeners, point them to on the internet? Where can they check out the project?
If you want to check out my new company, it's just Vora.io. If you're interested in me on Twitter, it's just my name, Erik Cason, on Twitter. I got a Nostr account that's linked through there as well. Yeah, it's always great seeing you. I was hoping to see Luke as well, but I'll have to give him a hug the next time that I see him. Yeah, and I'm happy that we're able to come and have an interesting dialogue about this. And I think that this is kind of how we make our own contributions to solve these problems, is just having friendly, thoughtful dialogue with one another to try to hash it out, if you will.
Yeah, and you should read Erik's book, Crypto Sovereignty.
Yes, and you should read all of Knut's books that you see there in the background.
Yeah.
So particularly One Over Clown World that he gave me while we were both in Canada, and it's on my reading list. So
yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to me tonight, and we'll like, subscribe and brush your teeth, and cheerio. See you next time, Erik, whenever that is.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. I'll see you in the near future.
He disappeared. Well, bye.